Greetings and welcome to Growth Hacking Secrets. I'm your host Mohammed Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia, and the co-author of New Success Secrets available on Amazon. On this episode, we have a special guest, Jason Yarusi. Jason is the multifamily real estate investors with a portfolio of over 800 plus units, $75 million, $70 million plus. So lean forward and start listening because I have no idea about you. I will be leaning forward and listening with these two very, very carefully. Why? Because how many times you get a person with a $70 million plus with they are willing to share all the lessons they learned in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Jason Yarusi. Jason, welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. How are you?
Excellent. Jason, let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to become a multifamily real estate investor and build a huge portfolio for yourself?
So it's easy to say, but it's been built around family, right? And us finding out what we wanted out of life. And so my wife and I, we met in New York City. It took us, we knew each other many years before we got together. And when we did, we were in one course of our life, but we realized when we were going to start a family that the course of life we were in, right? So we were working late hours, right? We were in, we had restaurants, we had a brewery. It wasn't going to be conducive to the life that we wanted to bring children into. And we realized that our activities were driven by just really having to be active, right? So in many professions, if you're not doing, there's no result. If you're not actively doing, you're not going to get a paycheck and other points. And so we wanted to figure out a way that we could control our time, and right, because it's the one variable that we can't get back. How can we look at our time and be able to choose when to do and still be productive, not only in our family life, but in our finances and our fitness? And so we started looking at different things, right? And at this time, my father's construction business had really exploded. So my brother, who was working with me, we went out and helped dad's family business, and it was great, but we were just building on active roles. And we got into real estate some 10 years ago now, doing more active roles, right? So we started doing some flipping, some wholesaling, and we quickly realized that we were not aligning with our goal to be able to do activities that allow us to choose our time. And it took us to finding, buying some rentals out of state where they were small rentals, where we were able to go put together a process, build a team, right? Like you talk about, build, run, and manage an unstoppable team. That we saw that the ability to buy properties and put together a plan and allow people to do what they do best in the team and allow everyone to benefit from that, that was an eye-opener for us. But we were doing it on small units. It was 2 and 3s. And we said that to look at that from a scalability approach just seemed maddening, right? It seemed like, how could we do this to really get to a point where it would be enough revenue, enough money to really accomplish our mission? And we heard about people buying large apartment buildings, and there was this light switch that went off. And it was that we could take what we do best, right? So to take businesses and help them really perform better, and look at that from an apartment building, right? So there's so much that you can do to move the lever on a single family house or a 3-unit or a 6-unit. But when you do this across 50 units or 100 units, right? So something as simple as changing out all the toilets for low E-flush toilets, that may reduce your water bill by 20%. And if you did that on a single family house, most people aren't going to come in and pay you exorbitant amount of money because you've now replaced the toilet. But if you do this across an apartment building, it may in fact increase the value of that property a couple $100,000 based on you reducing the water bill. So looking at that, we said, this is a place that we could really put our time, really put our effort and our energy, and start to do this proactively. So we started looking at markets, looking at really the type of properties we want to go after. And we found that we were living in New Jersey just up until recently, that New Jersey wasn't going to be one of those markets. So we started focusing in the Midwest and the Southeast, finding markets, building our team, building our brand. And that really led us to our first purchase, which was a 94 unit. And that was really the pinnacle moment of us building the business and continuing to build the business up to today.
Which year was that, a 94 unit? Which year?
That was 2017. So we started in multifamily properties in 2016. And then it took us time to figure out our markets, figure out our team, really just grow our base of investors, talk to our banks, our brokers, for us to identify. First, we were looking in North Carolina, but then we transitioned over to Kentucky, to Louisville, Kentucky. And so the first was in May of 2017.
Now you are in how many states?
So now we're in 4 states that we're in right now, where we actively are in properties. Of course, none of them are New Jersey. We've actually just recently moved from New Jersey down to Tennessee, where we just brought a property. It's our first property here at 93 unit 4.5 months ago. So we're excited for continuing the process. But again, it's proved the concept, right? So we can do this from New Jersey. And now we're in Tennessee. We can do this from Tennessee, right? Because we're setting up the teams, we're setting up the processes. Because in lots of part of my life, and I'm sure people can relate, is that we assume that we have to do it for it to get done right or best. But most of the time, I'd say that's narrative is true, right? Let's just say it's true. And there's 10 things to do. We're not going to be able to do all 10 things. So right now we might get 2 done and the other 8 are a 0. So regardless if we could do them better than others or not, we're not able to be proactive. We're not able to build. So as we've now brought in more team, brought in more members to our process, it's allowed us to continue to grow, because now everyone's able to do their strengths without really being compromised by lack of ability, right? Because multifamily is a team sport. And doing that, you can build a lot instead of trying to say, I have to do it on my own.
Yeah, multifamily is a team sport. In fact, success is a team sport. You can't do it alone.
That's right.
Jason, finding a deal is hard, or the investors? The chicken or the egg thing, because you need a deal and the investor. It's a syndication to make it successful. What was the most difficult in your experience?
So I like to reframe it a little bit differently. I never want to be asking for money, because if I know I'm asking for money, it means that I haven't done my work ahead of time. So we built it. We've had a lot of friends. We've had a lot of partnerships at other points. We started talking to them about what we were doing so they can understand, right? Because many times there's usually 5 stages, right? So the first stage may be as speaking to an investor, who am I, right? Because that investor may or may not know me, but may or not know what I've done in the past or what I'm doing now. The second is ideally the space I'm in. And now, okay, it's going to be multifamily investing. The third may be, okay, why the multifamily investing, right? Because this may be something they never even heard or knew was possible. Maybe they thought it was just for REITs or some other parts where it wasn't something where people could do this that were just like them. The next would be specifically, what are we trying to do with these properties, and what type of returns are we looking at? And then the last would be, here's the actual deal. And I find that many times that the failure is, if you try to do all that with your first time meeting, it's too much information for someone. And when you have a confused mind or an overloaded mind, it's a no, right? Because it's too much for people to take on. But if you do this before you have a deal, it allows you to build your investor database. And how we did this before we had our first one is that we created a mock deal of what we were looking for. And so we basically just created this, here's the deal we're going to find, right? Here it is. Here's how it works. Here's who we are. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we want to do this. Here's what we're going to do. If this is something that, when we find this, would this be something that you may be interested in? And that's how we built our investor database. But where it gave us comfort is, in our mind, we already knew subjectively we could raise X amount of dollars. So when I found that deal, we already knew in our mind, we had those conversations already. So it wasn't a guessing game that we said, oh, we got this deal. Now we have to go see if we can raise this amount of money. Yeah. Because if I do it on that side, now I have to go ask the investor for money. And I'm not helping them because I need to have the money. And on the opposite way, I've now built a base where I can help them potentially, reach their goals, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wonderful. That's great. I love this mock deal concept. So, I'm a student, so I like to learn, and people are watching this. They also like to learn. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And how big just curious, how big is your investor database by now?
Good. That's a good question. I'd have to look. I mean, we're at a couple hundred investors, but typically, we don't usually do a big blast out for our deals, because as we've built, we have a lot of investors because you don't need 1 million investors. You don't need 1,000 investors. You need a good core group of investors who can be your entryway to meet new investors. Because What's better, me coming to someone, asking them if they would be interested, who we've never met before, or an introduction from an investor who's had a great experience with us, and now they've introduced us. I mean, we have in a few deals, we have the first was one gentleman, and then he introduced his brother, and then another brother, and then another brother, and now his cousin. You know, I don't know how big his family is, but we might have a whole deal with just them soon, right? And so if you look at that, that's amazing, right? Because it's proving that we're doing something that's helping others, but it's also allowing us to walk into a conversation with a warm connection, where we don't have to spend so much time always on us. It's more talking about them and how we can help them reach their goals.
Understood. Jason, what are the top 3 mistakes to avoid to do a successful multifamily deal?
Yeah. So number one, if you haven't done a deal before, you want to get that deal. And sometimes you'll find ways to, you may not pay attention, right? But you may say, oh, if I do this 2% here and another 1% here and then another 3% here, and if I just see if maybe I can get 1% extra on the rent bump, or maybe I will be able to operate this just a little bit lower on the expenses, all of a sudden the deal works, right? Because we want to get into this deal. And so when you think about that, sure, that sounds great, but these are large projects. And it would be better for you to take 2 years and get into a good deal than take 2 months and get into a deal that's going to haunt you for years, because these are large projects. They take a lot of resources. So I see people try and curve the line. How quickly can I get a deal? Well, it may take you 6 months. It may take you a year and a half. And then maybe the next deal comes a month later. You never know. But do the work and have the steps in place. So that would be number one. Number two is that we've done probably, a third to half the deals on our own, like my wife and I. And why that sounds good, right? We do all the steps as the general partners. It's a lot, right? And so you can only be as proficient as your time, as your involvement and commitment. So if we're working with the bank, we're not working on the repositioning plan. If we're, talking to investors, we're not working potentially on fill in the blank. So having partners on deals allows you to accomplish more, get to your goals faster, right? Because this is a team sport, and it's about building a long trajectory for your future, not one in and one out. And lastly would be just thinking that small is safe. And stay with me here, but if you're to say, I think I'm going to start with a 10-unit building instead of a 50-unit building or a 100-unit building. And well, why? Because I think it would be safer. Well, why would it be safer? Just because I feel like I could, in my mind, it's safer. But if you look at it from the other part, if you have 4 vacancies on a 10-unit, you're at 60% occupied. If you have 4 vacancies on a 100-unit, you're 96% occupied. The bank is going to be more forgiving, or they're going to be more attracted to the larger property because it's got more abilities for the debt to be paid. Also, you'll be able to do more with the process because you'll have more economies of scale built in, right? So for a 10-unit, you wouldn't be able to hire a full-time leasing person, a full-time maintenance person. So everything potentially might cost more. You might have to be doing more for yourself just to be able to have that property perform. Whereas in a large property, you can build into a business, right? So you'll be capped on the size of the business in the opposite way, where it won't be safer because there's more downside risk with the 10-unit, because one thing that could go wrong there could really push that deal in the wrong way, where you have more ability to push levers for you to win on a larger property.
Yeah, wonderful. And plus, you mentioned about banks. Banks try to give you the better rates and deal and financing on a larger property, not on a smaller, because there's so many big players who want to compete for your business,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Jason, it all sounds good. It looks like you're a very knowledgeable person, and I'm learning so much from you. And that's how people are watching this. They are learning from you too. So, however, we all have a failure in our life. What's your greatest failure story you like to share from multifamily real estate investing? What did you learn from it, and how did you recover from that?
So remember, these are buildings that are alive, right? There's hundreds of people living in these buildings, and you can do your best due diligence. And where you have to do is you have to build up your team. So we had a property once where actually the lift station was new, the pumps were replaced, and into the property for whatever reason, we're 3 months in, the lift station goes down. And so now it shuts off water to the building. Now we've done our due diligence, we've done all of our tests, we've done everything to the part, and it just was a happenstance. So where we were able to combat this is that It was actually a part that was no longer made. So we had to have this completely rebranded, and it took the building offline for a couple of days. And the way that we were able to part here to make this the best of the worst situation is that this has happened in the past years ago with the owner, and he didn't help the tenants at all. Our point here was that we got to the tenants, started bringing them over, started having really good response with them, started setting them up with housing, started doing everything we could for these next couple of days to make this the best experience for them, to know that we are doing everything here to make this a better place to live. So it set the narrative going forward that we were here to help, even in a poor situation, because our ultimate goal here is to make these better places to live. We can all look at these from investment in vehicles. We can all look at these returns. We can all look at these, fill in the blank. But in that front, if we're not making them a better place to live, are we really accomplishing our mission? Because if we make this a better place to live, tenants will be happier. They'll treat the property better. It will perform better, which will ultimately provide more resources that potentially could be better returns for our investors. And so it all becomes this full circle. And if we just focus on potentially, well, let me figure out how to make the most money of this building, well, it ultimately may look good on paper, but it misses the mission, and a lot of times will not accomplish the goal.
No, that's amazing. Make a better place to live. I love the concept from this. Jason, let's switch the side. Let's get on your successes. So promise me that you're going to give us your best ones, okay?
Sure. Yeah. So, well, I'll go back.
What are your top 3 success secrets in a multifamily real estate investing?
Success secrets. One is that you want to, it sounds under promise, over deliver, right? And so for that it's consistency with your message. And so we typically don't just go after a deal if it only is going to have the ability to refinance and get out of the deal. And that's the only way it works. We want to have multiple exit strategies, because time can change, just like we saw with COVID, right? Where it shut down a lot of the lending opportunities for those couple months there. So having multiple ways that you can win with the property. If there's typically just one way this property works, that's not going to be a deal for us, because it's going to limit it on really the ability for us to have options where we can do what we're supposed to do, preserve capital for our investors, grow their capital, and return their capital, right? So we want to make sure we're focusing on all parts. The second is do what you say you're going to do. Sometimes the easiest thing is that, right? But if you tell someone, an investor, that you're going to give them a response by tomorrow, give them a response by tomorrow. It's however you're going to show up that carries forward the narrative of what they'll expect from you. And this comes to you if you're just starting this business and you don't have a track record. It's got to be on what your track record was before. Because if you showed up continually before, well, that's they're going to know that's the person that they're going to get here. And not everything's going to go perfect, but it's always better to go through the responses with investors. And we send out a monthly email that just says, here's what's happening in the property. Here's what's going great. Here's what needs attention. Here's what we're doing to work on what needs to have attention. And we find that giving that message to investors each month, it allows them to be involved in a project and not have to feel like they don't have the information and have to come ask questions frequently because they're not understanding what's happening out there.
No, this is good. This is good. Great. One more. As a bonus, one more.
One more for that. So I think you have in your book runners. And what I think is, I run ultra marathons. I ran a little over 2,500 miles last year. And one thing about running is your mind's going to try and stop you way before your body will, right? You could run, and you find in a 100-mile race, you run the first 50 miles with your legs, the last 50 miles with your mind. And sometimes it's just, can I get another mile? Sometimes it's, can I go to the bridge? Sometimes it's can I go to another 200 steps? Sometimes, can I just make it to the tree? But with apartment buildings, with life, with goals in real estate, it's a lot like running, right? You have to just say, okay, I'm here. My mind's telling me to stop. I just have to get to that next part. And when I get to that next part, just figure it out from there. And so you get to that next tree. It's not, oh, I got to the tree, maybe I'll stop now. It's, I got to the tree. Okay, can I get to the bridge? Okay, can I get to this part? And then you look back, and lo and behold, you've accomplished 100 miles. And that's a lot like it is with real estate and by and large multifamily. There's a lot of pieces you're going to be doing now, from building your brand, building your team, looking your market, talking to your investors, talking to brokers, analyzing deals, offering on deals. And sometimes it might feel like you're not building to where you want to go because you're not getting that deal, right? If that's what you're looking at. But if you're looking at these points, each point is a milestone, each point is a stepping stone for you to get to where you are. That's going to allow you to get to your mission, to get to your goals, because you're not putting all your emphasis on, oh, I have to get this deal. It's on, okay, my wins today are, can I call 3 brokers? My wins today is like, can I analyze one deal? And when I get to that one deal, can I figure out where to go from there? And if I call those brokers, can I figure out where to go from there? And if you have the 100-mile mindset in your mind, that's going to allow you to succeed, whether you're here today that you're talking about, building the secret for a successful team, to accomplishing your goals, whether it's in business or in real estate.
Wonderful. That is amazing. So how your exit look like in 3 years, 5 years for investors? How refi, cash out or something? What's a typical exit in your?
So we typically have been doing between 5 and 7 years. The first one we just exited a year ago. We just did a cash out refinance on 2 other ones, which was great to bring capital back to investors. But typically we're looking at a 5 to 7 year horizon. But you have to constantly be analyzing your deals, because we don't have the crystal ball, right? We can look at the business plan today, where we think this business plan will go going forward, but we have to look throughout. Is this a good time to potentially sell the property? Is this a good time to potentially refinance the property? Is this one that we want to hold on for longer? We feel the value will be there. So you have to constantly have your head on the swivel, right? Because you can't put your head in the sand and assume that this is the way and the only way. This can be the way, but there's other things that are going to come up that could produce a different result, right? We wouldn't have expected interest rates to go so low.
Very good.
Yeah.
Keep your mind open.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Sure. How the growth hacking secrets community people are watching this now can support you?
Oh, thank you for asking. So we love to talk to anybody who's just, the mindset's big for us, right? It's taking that first step, but having a targeted first step that gets you to your goal. So want to hear more about us, go over to yarusiholdings.com. You can also go to mfliveevent.com. We're going to be doing a free live event March 25th and 26th, just having a bunch of friends who do multifamily come in here and talk about what they've done to be successful in this. And it's 2 days, a free live virtual event that you can come join in and ask some good questions, just like we're trying to do, to get better at what we're doing.
Wonderful. Yarusiholdings.com. It's on your screen right now. Is YARSU. I apologize. YARUSI holdings.com. Thank you so much, Jason. We are about to wrap up. I'd like to get a quick word about your today's guest experience on the show. What would you say about your today's guest experience on Growth Hacking Secrets?
I love great questions. And this was a show really just full of great questions. And I found in my life, the best I can be is when I learn to ask better questions, because better questions enable better responses. And when we stop opening our mind and stop asking for really others, how we can help them, but also how they may benefit to give us great answers, that's when we limit where we're going. So this show has been targeted to help you get to where you need to be and get you to where you want to go.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. What would you say as a final word?
Thank you so much. We always appreciate having great conversations on mindset. It starts with the mind. The mind is the one thing each and every day that we have to talk to and we have to overcome just to get to anything else we want to do. And if our mind's going to keep us back from the moment we get up, the rest of our day is always lost. So it's us against us to have the best day forward starting, and then everything else comes after that.
Jason, I love it. And I 100% agree. I'm a student of 13 standards of knowledge. The number one standard of knowledge is the potential of your mind. Everything starts from the potential of your mind. With that, thank you so much, Jason, for sharing your wisdom with us today on the behalf of Growth Hacking Secrets community and our entire team. We really appreciate you. This is Mohammed Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Until the next episode, all good wishes.
Thank you, Mohammed.